Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. So MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred has informed baseball owners that baseball in 2021 is going to go back to a normal 162 game schedule, and they should prepare for spring training as normal come up in February. So good news there in that regard. In terms of the league structure, now if you remember last season with the whole bubble and trying to keep teams in certain parts of the country, there was really no American League, National League in that sense. Everyone was just kind of bubbled together. You just kind of had East, West, and Central. And of course, once you got to the playoffs, then kind of teams, broke off between American League and National League, and they added some wild card and all that stuff. So hasn't confirmed which way they're going to go. It seems, again, if things go normal in terms of if baseball will go back to a 162 game structure and vaccines are getting rolled out, things are getting better, probably look at more of the traditional division of, again, AL Central, AL West, and AL East, and all that so forth. So what this basically did last year, just jumbled a bunch of teams in the East where you had like the Yankees were technically in the same division with the Phillies and the Mets. So probably it's going to be more of what we saw before that, where it was just, the Yankees in their own division. Of course, the AL East division, again, there would just be between the Yankees, Red Sox, Orioles, Tampa, and the Toronto Blue Jays. So again, just looking at all the teams there, and you'd have to say, again, the Yankees are the favored, probably just slightly, even though I know Tampa knocked them out last season, but you got to expect Tampa to take maybe just a little step back, and they lose Blake Snell. He goes out to San Diego, and San Diego's putting something together there. They also get Yu Darvish, and of course, San Diego's kind of one of the breakout teams last season. So they're adding a couple of pitches to the starting rotation there, probably try to make a push, probably put some pressure on the Dodgers out there. So again, that kind of leaves Tampa in the void. Now, you know what, Tampa Bay Rays, they're always going to find a way, even if they lose, they always lose their big stars, whether it's, Price, Longoria. They always have some pitches up, because that's just the way they roll, small payroll, but just getting prospects and drafting well. So, but again, losing Blake Snell, that is technically kind of their ace. So you got to figure they take a step back. So good news for the Yankees in that regard. Boston Red Sox, now you're looking at them. Chris Sale, missed last season with the Tommy John. He's going to be coming back, but, he's going to miss a chunk of the season. Who knows how healthy he's going to be. Again, the Red Sox shipped out Mookie Betts last season, so that's a major bat. That's like, imagine the Yankees losing Judge, more or less. So I still think, they might be a little better next season, but, that is very disappointing 2020. I don't see them making any sort of large step in that regard. So they'll be there, but I don't really see them as much as a threat. And the Baltimore Orioles have just been an absolute train wreck for the past 20, 25 years. Again, really, no one really wants to play there. They just don't seem to draft well. It's really nothing going right in Baltimore. So again, I just see them, you play at Baltimore just to stack up on your wins. Really threat possibly for the Yankees, of course, would be the Toronto Blue Jays. And speaking of the Blue Jays, that brings us to our next guest. His name is Mark Colley. Now, he's part of a trio who hosts a podcast called Section138. It's a Blue Jays podcast available on Apple Podcasts. And he's going to do a little scouting for us. He's going to give us the inside track on the Toronto Blue Jays, maybe a team you're not too familiar with, especially being up in Canada. And, yes, they did qualify for the postseason last year, but maybe not making a lot of noise nationwide. So he's going to give us the inside track, give us some news, some moves they may make in this offseason, let you know about some of the players you should know about and some of the players that are up and coming, as well as discuss the Rogers Center, some of the pros, some of the cons of it, and just the general air of Toronto itself and, baseball in a hockey town. So let's bring them on. Hi, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Now, fans can follow you on Instagram. It's Section138 Pod. It's the Section138 podcast on Apple Podcasts. It's a Blue Jays podcast. Funny enough, you do see some Blue Jay fans in New York when the Blue Jays come to town. So there is a following there, and it says it's great to have you on the show. So just tell us, I guess, where you're currently located at the moment.
Yeah, I'm living in Nashua, New Hampshire, which of course is Red Sox territory. So if it wasn't for the Red Sox, I definitely would hate the Yankees most, but the Red Sox take the cake there. So I'm sure people watching will be happy about that.
So I like that. It's the enemy of my enemy is my enemy.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're part of a team. There's also Bryson and Jacob. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right. And when did this podcast get off the ground? What inspired you guys to start it up?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing it for a couple of years now. We started back in 2017, which was not a great time to start being a Blue Jays fan because the Blue Jays were not a good team back then. But we've kind of been doing it off and on, getting back to doing it consistently this past year and this year. So it's been a journey, but it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, everyone can go listen to it at Section138 Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and then you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts, really.
Right. And you also have an overall the Blue Jay. There's a new site. It's 360 Blue Jays also on Instagram.
Yep, at 360 Blue Jay News on Instagram.
Now, I looked at the seating chart for the Rogers Center. Now, I do Section 420 because it's upper deck behind home plate, so I like that view. So, what made
Mhm.
you, guys, think about like 138?
Yeah, 138 is actually where Jose Bautista hit his bat flip home run, which you can probably see behind me, but that's where the ball landed. Section 138, which is kind of like the left field side in the 100 levels. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I look at the seating chart, so it was like left center field. So I don't know if like why did they pick 138, but yeah, that
Mhm.
that totally makes sense. And that was definitely one of the signature moments, I think, for the Blue Jays. I think other than the Joe Carter touch 'em all Joe,
Mhm.
that home run, that bat flip by Bautista probably has to be like again, it didn't end in a championship, but it has to be one of the more memorable moments for Blue Jay, the Blue Jay organization and the fans.
Right, yeah. It wasn't the ending we wanted, of course, because in the next series they lost to the Royals, but it was definitely, I think, the defining moment for the current generation of Blue Jay fans. I think um, there's a new generation that's coming to love the Blue Jays back, both in the 2015, 2016 postseason runs, and then now that the Blue Jays are getting to be more competitive. So I think that team, and then now you have some moments with guys like Bichette, guys like Vladdy. I think that's coming to define the team as well.
Gotcha. Now it seemed like the Blue Jays, like again, when he hit that home run, the place exploded. It's a big stadium, it's packed. It just though you seem like all right, great. They made the wild card last season. Seems like they're starting to put something together. But the Blue Jays, this as an organization, just since that early '90s, which has had an incredible run, they haven't been able to put like a long streak of years together. Is there any particular reason? Is it like they just, in terms of different philosophies, let's develop players versus free agency? Is it been like an ownership issue or a GM issue? Like, why haven't there been like a really long, sustainable run there, for the people in Toronto?
Yeah, it's been tough to be a Blue Jays fan the last, 25 years. They did have one of the longest postseason droughts in baseball until, of course, they made it in 2015. And I think it's a combination of those factors. We had some good players over the years. We had Roy Halladay, Vernon Wells, Ricky Romero was good for a few years before he, got over the hill. And it's just been something about not being able to put all the pieces together. Even the early 2010s, you had Jose Bautista, Edwin Encarnacion, and it took a few years to get over that hill and get all the pieces together and have, the Blue Jays general manager, Alex Anthopoulos, decide to go out and buy and trade for guys like David Price, Josh Donaldson, Russell Martin, all of them coming. So I think it's been a combination of those factors. The Blue Jays seem like they've always been a team on the brink. They had some pretty horrible years through the late 1990s, early 2000s, but they did have some not bad years as well. So I think it was just a factor of not willing to spend that extra bit of money at the trade deadline, put that team over the brink, and not a great development system as well, and not a great general manager, to be honest, JP Ricciardi. So.
Gotcha. Now they're officially owned by Roger Communications. I mean, has that been the case for the past like 25, 30 years?
Yeah, I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly, early 2000s when Rogers bought the entire team. I think they had owned part of it before that. It was owned actually by a brewery for the early years of its history. So I think it's been about 20 years, 25 years that Rogers has owned it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember in the early '90s, like they developed some players, internally, like John Oliver and stuff. But it was like the marquee place for a lot of free agencies. I mean, Dave Winfield went there a little bit. You had David
Hmm.
Cohn there for a while, Roberto Alomar, Paul Molitor. I mean, you look at those early teams; they're like just complete from top to bottom. Developed Jimmy Key, of course, but then also brought in some free agency. It was like, that was just like they were almost like unstoppable, really. And it just seems like since that early '90s, they just haven't been able to get back that sort of that dominance that they had during that period.
And even back then, they did trade for a lot of players. I mean, guys like Joe Carter, they had to trade to get him, and I think that's one thing about Toronto that I think a lot of people have the impression of, but it really is true that it's a hard place to sign free agents, or at least it is when the team isn't winning. It's hard to convince guys to come here because, frankly, it is a different country. There are different tax laws. It's the complications of, do you move your family up to a different country, getting work visas worked out, all that stuff. So it does add a complicating factor, and it makes the Blue Jays have to pay a premium for some of these free agents, which we're seeing this season, which there is the added factor of the Blue Jays don't know where they're going to play, whether it's in Buffalo, Dunedin, Toronto. But that is something that's always been the case for the Blue Jays. And when you don't have a winning team, it's hard to convince players to give up that, extra complication of moving to a different country for a team that, to be honest, most of the time hasn't been that good. I think a lot of fans are thinking they're going to play in Dunedin this year, which is in Florida, of course, where their spring training facility is. That's because, if you look at the weather in Buffalo where they played this season, it's not that great when it comes to, April early season games. So I think odds are they're going to be playing in Dunedin, but really we don't know. We don't know what the situation is going to be with the government if they, come April, if the Canadian government does exempt teams to travel across the border. And of course, there is a requirement when you travel across the border for a 14-day quarantine period. So whether the government waives that, whether it decides to keep it in place for teams, which is why the Blue Jays had to play in Buffalo in the first place, we really don't know. And it's just a matter of time. But like I said, I think the most likely scenario is that they end up playing in Dunedin this year.
Gotcha. Now, of course, we know some of the, probably the biggest star, currently with the Blue Jays is Vlad Guerrero Jr. But maybe who's some of the other just undescript or unspoken about, players on the team that, other baseball fans should know about?
Yeah, I think one that's gaining a lot of traction and maybe people are thinking about even more than Vladdy is Bo Bichette. He has really outperformed Vladimir Guerrero Jr. over the past few years. Vladdy, as I'm sure you know, kind of came up to the majors and has disappointed a lot of fans, but Bo Bichette has come up to the majors and impressed a lot of fans, and he kind of flew under the radar when he was coming up through the Jays system, but he's really been a top prospect, a top guy for the Blue Jays. Some other guys, Kevin Biggio is another one of those young players. He isn't a flashy player. He doesn't hit for power a lot, but he's a really great defender. He gets on base a lot. He has a great eye at the plate. That's one guy you want to keep an eye on for the Blue Jays. Pitching wise, the Blue Jays pitching is weaker than it's hitting, obviously, and it doesn't get a lot of attention. But some guys on that side of thing, Nate Pearson is definitely a name to look out for. He was injured this year, didn't quite make the impression he wanted to in the majors, but heading into 2021, you can definitely look out for him. Jordan Romano made his major league debut out of the bullpen for the Blue Jays this year, and he was lights out. I think he got the first 27 batters he faced out in the majors, so he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, because I think the Blue Jays, they put few games over 500, make the wild card. And I think this season they could, jump up, because I don't think Boston's going to have a good season. Tampa, we know there's probably still going to be a thorn, but they lose Blake Snell, so they could probably take a little step back. Plus, I think the whole, kind of, they say a sophomore jinx, like, I guess the euphoria of going there, going to the World Series. Usually teams next season kind of take a step back. They get a little, maybe forgot what guy got them there. So this could be a season where I think the Blue Jays could take a little jump there. So, I guess there could be some, nail-biting big games between both, the Yankees and Blue Jays come September.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. It's a good opportunity for the Blue Jays because, like you said, you do have the Rays taking a step back, although I never want to count the Rays out because, as you said, they always seem to find a way to win. And I think the Yankees are definitely going to be the biggest competitors in the AL East, but even then, I mean, better than I do, but it just seems like they haven't been as aggressive as they normally are in the offseason. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like now is a good time for the Blue Jays to make a push. And whether they end up as a wild card team, whether they end up as AL East winners, I definitely think now is the time for them to make a push into the postseason, because we saw it last year. if they really do go out and get a big name in the offseason, whether it's George Springer, whether it's Trevor Bauer, Jake Odorizzi, someone like that. We've just seen them get two guys in the last 12 hours in Kirby Yates and Chatwood. So if they can take that extra step, get a big free agent, I think we'll definitely see them be very competitive in the AL East this year.
Yeah, and just feeling like the Yankees, like, they're kind of more standing pat. Like, I guess the big name that, obviously, they're gonna bring back DJ. Maybe the only surprise is, adding Corey Kluber, which, again, former Cy Young Award winner, but 2 injured seasons in a row. Not sure exactly, if he can last the whole season. But yeah, I mean, the Yankees more or less stand pat. I think they figure like they got their nucleus. We just need to just win, win these big, game fives, which that's just been their problem. So, and again, Baltimore's just they've been lost for like the last 20 years. I don't know what's going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, Tampa's always going to be a thorn. Like even on an $8 million payroll, they'll find a way to be competitive. But I think this season it's going to be probably Yankees and Toronto kind of competing for the AL East.
Yeah, I think that'll be the main storyline, and honestly, I hope that's the main storyline because then, like you said, it means the Rays aren't there. I think another thing to keep track of for the Blue Jays, at least, is what the postseason structure looks like in 2021 because we don't totally know whether it's going to be 16 teams, 14 teams, 12 teams. If it's 14 teams, how are you going to structure it? What does the wild card picture look like? I think for a team like the Blue Jays that might be contending for the AL East championship, but is probably more likely going to be fitting into a wild card spot. I think that's something that's really important to look into, whether they get a good seeding in the wild card position, what that even looks like in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to take a guess, because usually, baseball or the sports never scales back. So I think they like the idea of more teams involved just because more fans are going to be involved, more people are going to be watching on TV. It does dilute, I think, being a division winner a little bit by doing that. But I just think they like what we just saw this past season, where there's more teams involved. Even if there's a couple of one game playoffs, just to have more teams involved, similar to like hockey, just more teams involved just gets everyone juiced up, and they probably feel that's better ratings. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see some of those 2020 rules in terms of the postseason being moving forward just to get more teams involved.
Yeah, and I think like baseball seems to be an outlier in that sense that they've taken so long to get to this point of having expanded postseason because, I mean, like you said, every other league has a lot of teams in the postseason. So I think it's something that is favorable for ratings, favorable for getting more fans involved. And it's just plain exciting to have your team get into the postseason, even if it is a little bit diluted. I mean, for the Blue Jays, they didn't win a single game in the postseason this year, and they wouldn't have gotten into the postseason regularly if it was a normal 10-team postseason. But I still really enjoyed watching them in that situation, giving them the opportunity on the big stage with everyone watching. And then, of course, it gives you some bragging rights saying, oh, well, they lost 2 games to the Rays. The Rays went on to win the AL pennant. Give them a break, So it was nice to see that happen, even if it does, not mean as much as it may have used to.
I totally agree. Now, I saw one of your previous posts. This, again, people can follow on Instagram. Again, Section138 Pod. Possibly you would throw the idea out there, should the Jays bring back J.A. Happ a third time or so forth. I was going to give you some inside information here. We just had him. You don't want him back. Now, I should be rooting. I should lie to you and root. Say, yeah, no, sign him. He would be good for you. But I think at this point he's just pitching batting practice. So just let you know, you don't want keep J.A. Happ across the border. You don't want him.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, the Blue Jays have already had him twice, right? So they had him, I think it was early 2010s, and then they brought him back for 2015, 2016, around that period. So now there was a rumor that they were interested in him earlier this season, but it definitely does seem like he's, over the hill. He's 36 now, 37. So yeah, it doesn't seem like the type of guy that the Blue Jays want to get.
Now, yeah, well, I mean, when the Yankees acquired him, in the trade, he was good. I mean, because the reason they bought him in, he was supposedly like a Boston killer, and he kind of delivered. I think he went like 9-1 with the Yankees to close up the season. It's just last season he had a good spring training, and he just like never put it together. So, yeah, it's someone like I'll just get a little inside tip. You definitely want to stay away from Happ. Now, just getting back to the the Rogers Center for a while. I mean, again, the Blue Jays have been there for a while. There was some talk that maybe want to move somewhere else or get a new stadium. Has there been any movement with that, or that's pretty much going to be settled into the Rogers Center for the next of 10 to 5 years.
Right. Yeah, that's been something that's been on the radar of Blue Jay fans for quite a long time. The Rogers Center, when it was built and opened in 1989, it was kind of already past its prime. I mean, it was supposed to be like a world-renowned stadium, first of its kind. And then just a couple years after that, I think 1992, Camden Yards opened in Baltimore, and of course that changed everything as far as it goes with baseball stadiums, how they're built, the approach that teams take to them. And very soon, the Rogers Center became a stadium that was of yesteryear. It was a bygone era of multi-purpose, closed roof, and it's really just not a good stadium. It's a hunk of concrete. You can't see anything in the city besides the stadium. It's like a coliseum. It's really just not a great place to watch a ball game. It's nice with the roof open, but still not great. So this has been something that a lot of fans have been talking about for years and years. And we've seen over the past few years, Rogers and the Blue Jays make an effort to make small improvements to the stadium. They've been working on getting better concessions. They've been working on improving the playing field. But really, it's just been patchwork. It's been Band-Aids on the bigger problem of the stadium itself. So, yeah, you mentioned last year, I guess it was December, we saw the report that Rogers wanted to demolish the Rogers Center and build a new stadium on the same location, splitting the property, about half of it with a stadium and then half of it condos and business offices. So that plan, we haven't heard any updates since then. It's probably been delayed because of the virus, but it's definitely encouraging for the Blue Jay fandom, Blue Jay fan base, because it's been such a long time with this stadium, and it's not a great stadium. And the location of the stadium in Toronto is really great. It's in the heart of downtown. It's right next to the CN Tower, right down the street from Scotiabank Arena, where the Raptors and the Maple Leafs play. It's a prime location. It's just the stadium is not great. So, yeah, a lot of fans were encouraged by that news, although we really don't know when the new stadium is going to come, given the state of the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's still one stadium I haven't visited yet. I would maybe one day like to go there just before it. The only thing, like I said before, when they put the roof open and that sun comes glaring down, like half the field lit, half the field out with sun. That's like the only part. It's like a bit of an eyesore.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely kind of a unique stadium. But yeah, again, only thing I would say is this as like an opposing, I guess an opposing player. I just feel very uncomfortable with that infield. It seems like any ground ball is going to go through just because it's like AstroTurf or whatever. So it just feels like uncomfortable a little bit. I never feel like even the ninth inning, I just never feel a lead is safe there. When whether it's Chapman on the mound, even when Mariano was on the mound in the heydays, you just feel uncomfortable with that infield. This seems like any kind of almost like Tampa a little bit, like any ground balls is going to get through.
Mm-hmm. They've worked on it a little bit in the past few years, and they're actually getting new turf this year, which we'll see how it plays. But it's definitely been there's been a lot of instances over the years where it's just been unpredictable, kind of, even for Blue Jay players. I mean, even guys like Troy Tulowitzki, who classically a great defender, he's had trouble with the infield. So it's definitely a learning curve for players who come to Toronto, but I don't see that as the worst part of the stadium. I mean, there's other parks in baseball that don't have natural turf or natural grass. I see the worst part of the stadium as the fan experience. It's the fact that you can't see any part of the city when you're in it. It's the fact that if the roof is closed, which it is for part of the year until into May, and then whenever it's inclement weather during the season, it's a horrible ball game to watch. It's dark, it's loud, and not loud in a good sense of, oh, all the fans are excited. It's loud in that all the sound is echoing, and it's just kind of an obnoxious experience if the roof is closed. And I'm really excited to see the potential for a new stadium, especially just for the fan experience.
All right, and in terms of a culture thing, obviously, Canada's a hockey country. America's kind of weird too. I mean, it's a football country, so it's like football dominates everything. It's like, I guess, how's like the perception of baseball? I mean, is like, is it a sort of like a cult thing where only a certain group of people like it, but they're really into it, or is it getting more widespread? Like what's the set perception with obviously American baseball in Canada.
Yeah, I think you'd be surprised, actually. It's not as popular as you mentioned, like other sports. Like even I think even football at times has more popularity in Canada than baseball. But that doesn't mean that fans don't like it. I think a lot of fans, um, if you build it to use a famous baseball term, if you build it, they'll come. Right? You look at 2015, 2016. It was sold out games every day. The fans went crazy for winning teams. I mean, the end of 2015, when the Blue Jays were really, really competitive, it was a string of like 30, 40 straight sold out games. If you build a winning team, if you build a team that people are going to be interested in, it's going to be a great fan base. If you don't have a winning team, it's kind of a passive love of the Blue Jays, right? People will know the names, people will know Bo Bichette, Vladdy, but it won't be a thing where people are talking about the games, watching the games every day. So I'd say if you build it, they will come, but it's more of a passive love of the Blue Jays when they're not winning.
Gotcha. And yeah, I know some of those like seasons like 2015, 2016, just at Yankee Stadium, a lot of Blue Jay fans would come in and, they were like rowdy and not rowdy in a bad way, but pumped up into the teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I think, yeah, if the team's good, I think, definitely, get some juice from that area. So this you personally, becoming a Blue Jay fan was just cause you love baseball. Did it, come through a family? What was your passion with the Blue Jays?
Yeah, it's pretty much the family connection. My parents don't like baseball at all. They don't really like sports at all. But my grandparents, my grandpa is really into baseball. He actually was a Yankees fan before the Blue Jays came to Toronto in 1977, and then he converted to the Blue Jays, and that's really where it comes from. I like I said, didn't grow up in a sport family, but with my grandpa, went to games with him when I was younger, and I still do, of course, when there isn't a virus. So, yeah, that's where it comes from.
Gotcha. And in just terms of the podcast this season, are you looking to do anything new, different? Does any plans, with the rest of your host members?
Yeah, it'll definitely be more exciting than it was this year because we had to spend so much time going in circles about, is the season going to start? Is it going to be delayed? Is Rob Manfred going to institute a 60-game season, right? So we're going to have a lot more to talk about, assuming it does start on time. But as far as the actual podcast goes, we're planning to keep things pretty straight and simple. Have a few guests on throughout the season, but mostly just us three guys talking about the Jays and hopefully, fingers crossed, watching a winning season in Toronto.
No, I think guys are definitely on the way there again. Right, and again, any whether you're a Toronto fan, Yankee fan, want to get the inside track on the Toronto Blue Jays, you may have to come to town a little bit, and you say, let me check out these guys. Again, follow you on Instagram at Section138 Pod. And all your podcasts are on Apple Podcasts. Just go to Section 138, and plus any Blue Jays news on 360 Blue Jays. So that's your Instagram handle. So Mark Colley, again, thanks for coming on. It's great to talk some just general baseball with you. And unfortunately, when you come, I have to be rooting against you, though. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thanks for having me on.